The jails have been operating at 99% capacity since the start of last year. The BBC understands there are now just 100 spaces left in male prisons. The Prime Minister said this week they're having to check the precise number of prison places every day. In July, Labour set out legislation to reduce the amount of time inmates will spend in jail before they are automatically released from 50% of their sentence to 40%. That does not apply to those convicted of sex offences, terrorism, domestic abuse or some violent offences, but it will result in the release of 5,500 offenders in September and October. Today, the UK's Chief Inspector of Probation has told The Times it is inevitable that things will go wrong. Martin Jones warned that the government is rolling the dice. The move, he said, will put extra strain on the probation service, which lacks the resources to cope, although he acknowledges there are no longer any risk-free options available. And what about those inside the prisons? Mark Fairhurst is the National Chair of the Prison Officers Association. You're very welcome to the programme, Mark. What does this all mean for your officers that are working inside the prisons?
Well, as you mentioned there, for the last 18 months, we've been working at near enough full capacity. That all heaps pressure on staff on the front line who bear the brunt of prisoners' frustrations because they spend more time locked up because there's less activity spaces to keep them occupied. And we're hoping on the 10th of September, when we see those mass releases from prisons at the 40% mark of people's sentences, that we will actually get some much needed breathing space.
You'll have heard the comments there from Martin Jones that he says the government is rolling the dice, but he acknowledges there's no risk-free options available because there simply isn't the space. And now we've got the pressure of everything that happened through the summer with the summer riots. So the government's looking for more places. Do you see any way around this?
Well, this is a temporary measure which will probably give us a maximum of 18 months breathing space. So long term, the government needs to work on a strategy and look at sentencing policy and who we really need to put in prison. But that's going to take a lot of investment because, as you've just noted there, there's heaps of pressure now on the probation service, which are overworked and under-resourced.
Obviously, this is a longer-term issue. There is, I think, criticism of the former government, which is valid, but it goes back many, many years, and it comes back to the planning process for prisons. A lot of people don't want prisons in their community, and so we haven't built enough. How many prisons do you think we need in order to cope properly?
Well, I think that's entirely down to the government and which direction they wish to go in. So, for example, 3 years ago, it was predicted and projected that we would need at least 96,000 prison spaces by the middle of this decade. So the previous government failed to act on that, which left us in the mess we now see. So moving forward, what do we actually want to do? Because as we know, if you build new prisons, you will always fill new prisons, and there are other options available to reduce the prison population. So at least prison officers on the front line who face the rapid frustrations day in, day out, have an opportunity to do their job and rehabilitate people.
And as we know, some of our reoffending rates are appalling. They don't compare internationally. Is that where you think some of the focus should be?
I think we need to introduce robust community sentences that the public have faith in for those offenders who are serving 12 months or less, but that takes investment in the probation service. I think we need to look at the amount of offenders we lock up. So you could, for example, reduce the remand population by using modern technology, give remands an ankle tag and put them on a home curfew and only remand the most serious offenders. And then, of course, you've got the IPP prisoners, that's prisoners serving a sentence, an indeterminate sentence for public protection. There's roughly about 3,000 of those. They can't all be a risk to the public. Maybe we need to look at a resentencing exercise for those and see how many of them we can release.
And how does all this affect recruitment and retention within the prison service? And are numbers where they should be right now?
Well, if you ask the MOJ spokesperson, they will say that some jails have over-recruited. We're at 98% of our recruitment target. But the reality of the situation is recruits do not last long. They get a whole 6 weeks of training before they are fully trained and operational. That's not fit for purpose. They're expected to work, if you joined at 18 today, for 50 years on the front line. in the most hostile and violent workplace of anywhere that you will ever experience before they can enjoy a full career and a full pension, because our retirement age is at the ridiculous state pension age of 68. We just cannot suffice that. We cannot cope with that. It's cruel, it's impractical, and people are leaving for safer environments because it's very violent, and for better paid jobs because we don't compete with other public sector workforces.
No. Is it any wonder, as you say, it needs incentivising, doesn't it? And that is a long time to work in that environment. Mark, we're grateful for your time. Thank you for coming on.
Very welcome.